How do you balance the work that you do with your new relationship going forward?
Great question. Going back to your last thing, I think as well, there's some people in our industry who will just accept anyone as followers, because it's like, oh, it's all about building an audience. So it doesn't matter what the quality of the people following are. Whereas I'm like, I'm deleting and blocking people all the time, to keep that field clear. Um, so yeah, how does this relationship, what like the connection between this relationship and my work? It's really made me look at things in a very different way. I'm 52. I'm dating somebody who's got kids. The kids said to me today, "You're part of our family now," and it was just like, "Oh my God, it's lovely," but it's completely new to me, and I have really had to look at all the ways that I was protecting myself from being vulnerable. So, like for me, yeah, sex is the easier side, but the softening and the opening my heart, letting somebody in on that deep emotional level is, giving someone a key to my apartment. It's like, oh, this is confronting, but at the same time, yeah, it feels good. And it's about building trust in myself, trust in the other person. Um, and that's really been really beneficial in my work and supporting clients with that. And some of my clients are single and are really in the dating process. And it's been awesome to kind of share my perspective and learnings around how to do that in an empowered way and not compromising and holding your worth in that space. And also, relating is a huge field, and I would never position myself as a relationship expert at all. Um, but I know that the work I do has really helped my clients have incredible relationships. And like some of my clients have been with their partners for 30, 40 years, and they're closer than ever. They're having the best intimacy. And so that's really awesome as well. Yeah.
I know for me, there's like this joke where anytime there's something that is specific to like a couple, let's say for example, some couples wear like matching shirts or they have matching rings or they'll exchange keys, right? Like she always comes to, she's like, okay, if we do this, are you gonna pass out? If we do this, you're gonna
Yeah.
collapse,
Yeah.
right? Because they know how we are, right? And I can
Yeah.
just picture you when you gave that key, you're probably like trembling. You're like, am I gonna
It's
do
like
this?
we laugh about it. It's like, oh, another big step.
Yeah, like these steps
Yeah.
are huge and it puts things into perspective because you know what, you're trained in what you do, I'm trained in what we do, and yet these things are still big steps for us. So
Yeah.
imagine now those who aren't as trained or those who aren't experienced, like how big of a step do you think it is for them now?
Exactly, exactly. Yeah. And I always use the analogy of driving because I didn't drive for 30 years. I had a car accident when I was 18, didn't drive again, and it impacted my whole life. I lived in cities and public transport, so I didn't have to think about it. I'd have nightmares. I had a real phobia around driving. And just before I turned 50, I'm like, this is ridiculous. I've got to get over this. So I bought a car, started having lessons. I even had some lessons with my dad again. It was like being 17 again. And I got over my fear, and now I live in the countryside, and I wouldn't be in this relationship if it wasn't for the fact I could drive because we live about an hour away from each other. And I've had to really overcome that. For other people, driving is like second nature. It's like, yeah, of course. Like, what's the big deal? Like, I'm sweating and shaking when I get to a junction and really freaking out, and everybody else is fine. And yeah, I can talk about sex and orgasms and everything. It's like second nature to me. So it's like we all have areas where we're not confident, and we can develop our confidence if we can realize the importance of it, and we can acknowledge the fear, and we can acknowledge how things are holding us back, and if we can start to see what's on the other side of that fear when we overcome it and what's possible, then it's so worth it. Yeah.
Do you think that is hard then for people who are maybe nervous, anxious about it, to see how important and how powerful the success is at the end of the tunnel and at the end of the journey?
I think it's important to take baby steps and just recognize all of the baby steps along the way and to acknowledge those. Right? Because if you're trying to push yourself to become really successful in something and you haven't mastered any skills, or say, for example, you feel really insecure about your body, and that is impacting your love life, your sex life, how you feel about yourself, trying to like walk around going, I am the best, look at me, that's going to feel really impossible, you know. But if you can start to take those baby steps to start to form a new relationship with your body and do it in a way that maybe today I feel more 1% more confident, you know, how you can start to move in the right direction and recognize that it's going to take you a lot further. And I think it really helps you overcome your nerves and just to, yeah, take the little steps and slow everything down.
Do you think we will ever reach a point where people in relationships can feel completely comfortable with each other through the power of communication?
Oh, that's a big question. I think stuff's always going to come up, being realistic. You know, you've got two people who've got their own history, they've got their family history that they grew up with that's had an impact on how they see the world, that there's always going to be relationship dynamics. There's always going to be new challenges that might, you know, might trigger something that you reacting instinctively, and it's got nothing to do with the person in front of you, but it's something from the past or childhood or a previous relationship. So, can we ever be completely comfortable? You know, I think, you know, relationships are naturally going to challenge us, and there's a lot of growth in relationships. And I think we can, as long as we keep communication open and we can, um, so what I'm looking for, be respectful and kind to one another. I think that's the cornerstone of making things go in the right direction. You know, we can never say there's never going to be conflict, but it's how we repair the conflict that is important.
And that's a key word that I'm glad that you mentioned is the respect, especially the respect in the bedroom,
Yeah.
because it's a vulnerable place, right? Like your clothes are off, you're feeling what you're feeling, and there's a lot of trust involved, and there's a lot of respect that
Mm-hmm.
that you would want from that person. I was recently interviewed by someone she's a sexual assault survivor,
Mm-hmm.
and she wanted to speak to me because I work with women, and some of the women I work with are also survivors of that. And I posed a question, and I told her that what some people don't realize is that in the bedroom you may want to perform in a certain type of way, and you may want the other person to be a participant in certain maneuvers, right? And then I pose a question: would you want those same maneuvers done on you?
Mm-hmm.
And if the answer is no, then maybe you should reevaluate the type of intimacy or sex that you're having. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes I see this can sometimes play out, and I see it sometimes with women where they'll say, "Oh, I'm a giver, I'm not a receiver." And I always get really curious, like, well, what's underneath that? Is that a safety protection? Is it that receiving is too scary or vulnerable, or is that too confronting? You know, so it is a good point, you know. It's not just about, well, would we want to receive that, but it's like we should be, you know, there are times where it's really lovely to just give and give pleasure for the sake of it and getting pleasure by giving somebody else pleasure. But it's really what I think what's more important is that we're giving them authentic pleasure, and that might look completely different to what you've got in your head as to how it's going to go.